There's a reason you feel uneasy before bed. That strange weight on your chest. That moment you stare at the ceiling longer than you should, sensing that something inside you wants to speak, but you don't know how to listen. It's not anxiety. It's not exhaustion. It's a message. A message from the version of you who has already stepped into tomorrow's, who's already made the mistake you're about to make, who's already lived the same day you're on repeat for. And that version of you, older, bruised, wiser, is trying to whisper a warning through your routines, your stress, your dreams, and your breakdowns. But most people never hear it, because they're too distracted to notice that they've been sleepwalking through their own life, mistaking patterns for personality and fear for fate. Carl Jung didn't believe life was random. He believed most people suffer not from the world around them, but from the unconscious forces within them, the parts of themselves they refuse to understand. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is not poetry. That is prophecy. Because once you realize how many of your choices are not really choices, but reactions programmed by invisible wounds, you'll never see yourself the same way again. You weren't born defensive. You weren't born afraid of love. You weren't born terrified of being alone. You learned that. Somewhere in your life, you built strategies to survive pain. Those strategies became your habits, and those habits became your identity. But they are not the truth of who you are. Let me tell you about Owen, a brilliant analyst in a Fortune 500 firm, always on time, always polite, always smiling. To most, he was the model of success. But one day, during a team review, a mild comment from his supervisor, "You missed a detail in slide 4, triggered something no one expected. Owen's face turned red. His voice cracked. He began defending himself furiously, as if he'd been accused of betrayal, not a minor error. Everyone went silent. No one understood why such a small moment had exploded into a storm, but Jung would have understood. That wasn't just Owen responding to feedback. That was Owen's unconscious past, hijacking the present. You see, Owen had grown up with a father who only showed love when Owen was flawless. Praise meant safety. Mistakes meant rejection. So to survive, Owen built a perfect mask. But perfection is brittle. And the moment it cracked, the shadow underneath came pouring out. Jung believed that every human wears a mask, a persona, to survive social life. But behind that mask lives the shadow, the part of you you've been trained to hide. Your fears, your shame, your anger, your longing, your unmet needs. Most people don't know these parts exist until they sabotage something they care about. A relationship, a career, a friendship. And when it happens, they say, "I don't know what came over me." But something did come over them, their unconscious, their shadow, their inner child. All the parts they never made peace with. And that's exactly what your future self is trying to stop before it happens to you. This isn't just about self-help. This is about self-awareness. Because once you start to notice the patterns in your life, the types of people you attract, the emotions that erupt under pressure, the habits that feel impossible to break, you begin to see a deeper story. One you didn't write consciously. One that's been repeating behind the scenes for years. And if you don't interrupt it now, it will write your future. Jung's work wasn't about fixing yourself. It was about facing yourself. He believed that freedom begins the moment you stop blaming the outside world for the feelings that were shaped inside you, and tonight, right now, is your moment. The moment you stop sleepwalking and start waking up to the message you've ignored for too long. Because whether it comes in a breakup, a breakdown, a job loss, a panic attack, or a sleepless night, the message will keep coming until you listen. So tonight, before you scroll one more time or drift off into another forgettable night, stop. Listen. Your future self is not shouting. He is whispering, and the words are urgent. Your future self is begging you to wake up before you repeat the same day again. Most people don't realize it, but they haven't truly met themselves. They've only met the mask they've learned to wear. It's not makeup, it's not costume, it's deeper than that. Carl Jung called it the persona, the socially acceptable version of you that was crafted not out of self-love, but out of self-protection. It's the voice you adopt in meetings, the smile you wear when you're breaking inside, the confidence you fake when you feel like a fraud. You think it's your personality, but it's really your armor. And like all armor, it's heavy. What happens when you wear it too long? You start confusing the mask with your identity. But masks aren't made to breathe. They're made to shield. And the cost of shielding yourself from rejection is often losing your sense of real connection with others and with yourself. Think of Jordan, a rising executive known for his charisma, wit, and never miss a beat attitude. He lit up every room, had an answer for everything, and never showed an ounce of doubt. But one day, during a routine meeting, someone challenged one of his ideas. The room went silent. Jordan froze for a second, not because he didn't have a reply, but because something cracked. His voice trembled, his hands twitched. He rushed through the rest of the meeting and afterward locked himself in the restroom for almost an hour. When asked about it later, he laughed it off, but the spark in his eyes never returned. What happened? The persona slipped. The mask, once so polished and reliable, failed under the weight of unconscious pressure. And beneath it was not a fraud, but a frightened, tired, unseen self. Finally trying to breathe, Jung believed that we create our personas in childhood to survive the expectations of parents, teachers, and society. But if we never question it, we end up performing our lives instead of living them. He wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is." And the danger? You wake up one day surrounded by people who only know your mask and none who truly see you. It's why so many people feel lonely in a crowd, disconnected in a marriage, unseen in success. Because their truth has been edited out of their own story, frame by frame, smile by smile. Dramatic irony often unfolds when those around you believe in your persona more than you do. You become trapped by the expectations you helped create. The colleague who always calls you the strong one has no idea you cried yourself to sleep last night. The partner who leans on your logic doesn't know how badly you wish someone would just let you fall apart for once. And the more people admire your mask, the more afraid you become to take it off. Because now, losing the mask feels like losing love. But here's the tragedy. A mask may earn you praise, but only your truth can earn you peace. And every time your voice trembles, every time you flinch under pressure, every time you smile when you want to scream, that's not weakness, that's your soul knocking, asking to be let out, because beneath the mask is the self you've buried. The one who doesn't want to perform, the one who doesn't want to be perfect, the one who just wants to be real. The persona protected you, yes, but now it's holding you hostage, and the longer you wear it, the more disconnected you become, not from the world, but from yourself. So take a breath, take a pause. Ask yourself not, who do they think I am, but who am I when no one is watching? That answer might scare you at first, but that's how you'll know it's finally honest. The moment you feel your mask slip is not the end. It's the beginning of your return. Because in truth, the persona protects you, but it also traps you. There is a part of you that you've spent your whole life trying to bury, but it never stays buried for long. That part is your shadow. And one day, when you're tired, when you're under pressure, when someone touches an old wound, it slips out, and everything you thought you had under control suddenly breaks. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the part of your psyche that holds everything you don't want to be, but still are. The anger you deny, the jealousy you hide, the fear you suppress, the sadness you numb. And here's the cruel irony. The more you reject your shadow, the more it controls you from behind the scenes. Picture this. A man named Aaron. In the office, he's respected, polished, articulate, always the peacemaker. He avoids conflict like it's a disease, always trying to keep the energy light, the conversation safe. But one day, in a team meeting, a younger colleague challenges one of Aaron's ideas, casually, politely. Something cracks. Aaron's voice tightens. His hands curl. Then, without warning, he raises his voice and unloads a monologue filled with resentment, condescension, and pain no one expected. The room goes silent. The mask has fallen. And the shadow has taken the mic. What no one knew, not even Aaron, was that buried beneath his charm was years of feeling unseen, the need to be respected, the fear of irrelevance. A childhood of being ignored at the dinner table, of being talked over by louder voices. The shadow remembers everything you pretend to forget. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied, the blacker and denser it is." The shadow doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It festers, and when it's ready, it comes out in the form of sabotage. A joke that cuts too deep, a cold shoulder that lasts too long, a passive-aggressive comment you didn't mean to say but felt so good in the moment. These moments aren't just slip-ups. They are messages from the parts of you that are starving for acknowledgement. The most tragic part? Most people blame others when their shadow takes over. She made me angry. He triggered me. They disrespected me. But the truth is, no one can activate what you haven't already buried. The shadow is not created by others. It's revealed by them, and unless you face it, you'll keep repeating the same patterns with different people, calling it fate when it's really just the unconscious steering your life behind a mask of self-denial, and it doesn't stop at anger or jealousy. The shadow also hides your unlived potential, the dreams you gave up on, the talents you were told not to pursue, the boldness you shut down because someone once said, "You're too much." Your shadow isn't just darkness, it's unloved light. It holds both your worst fears and your buried greatness. Facing your shadow is not about shame, it's about freedom. It's about stepping into the parts of yourself that feel uncomfortable and saying, "I see you. You exist. You're part of me, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." Because once you do that, something strange happens. The shadow loses its grip. It no longer hijacks your reactions. It no longer sabotages your relationships. It no longer lurks in the dark corners of your dreams, waiting for you to slip. Jung didn't believe the shadow should be destroyed. He believed it should be integrated. "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," he said. And he meant it. Because once you accept your shadow, no one can use it against you. You stop being so easy to provoke. You stop needing approval to feel okay. You stop lashing out at the world for reflecting what you refuse to see. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to evolve. Because your shadow isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. Your shadow reveals the parts of you that must evolve. It doesn't happen when you're prepared. It happens in the hallway, in the email, in the dinner conversation where someone says something small and suddenly your heart is pounding like a war drum, your voice rises, or your silence becomes sharp and cold. That's the moment the mask cracks. Not because you're broken, but because something hidden inside you is tired of pretending. Carl Jung warned that this moment isn't random. It's the shadow surfacing, an eruption of all the feelings you've buried, just to keep life normal. Let's take a scene you might recognize. A man named Aaron, a high-level executive, calm and polished, respected by his colleagues, walks into a meeting. Everything seems ordinary until someone mildly questions his strategy. No accusations, just a suggestion. But Aaron's face tightens. His voice sharpens. He interrupts, defends, escalates. The room goes silent. Everyone sees an overreaction, but they don't see the wound underneath. Aaron was raised in a household where mistakes led to punishment. Criticism meant rejection. In that moment, his shadow, built from years of fear and unworthiness, leaked through the mask. His present self wasn't responding. His past was Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is the collapse. Not a breakdown of logic, but a breakthrough of truth. It often masquerades as an overreaction, a sudden change in tone, or a mysterious emotional shift in someone you thought you knew well. That friend who ghosts everyone after a disagreement, the parent who lashes out when you set a boundary, the co-worker who explodes during a minor delay. These are not just personality quirks. They are signs of shadow material breaching the surface, demanding to be seen. And here's the haunting irony. Most people don't recognize it. They blame the other person. They blame themselves. They replay the scene 1,000 times trying to explain it with logic, but the collapse is emotional, not logical. It's a backlog of ignored feelings, unmet needs, and unhealed moments, finally saying, "I'm still here." The real tragedy is that instead of learning from the collapse, most people run straight back into the mask. They patch it up, paint it prettier, and pretend nothing happened, never realizing that these moments are not signs of failure, but invitations to change. The collapse doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're alive. It means your soul is trying to speak. But will you listen? Or will you keep running? Jung saw collapse as a sacred threshold, painful, yes, but meaningful. It's the moment your unconscious knocks louder than ever before, and once you hear it, you can't go back. You can't pretend your reactions were random anymore. You begin to see the map of your own shadow, and that is the beginning of freedom. So pay attention to what enrages you, what drains you, what keeps you up at night. These are not random symptoms. They are messages. Messages from a version of you that is begging for light. Because the parts of you that collapse are the same parts that hold the blueprint to your wholeness. The breakdown is often the first sign of awakening. There is a strange and uncomfortable truth about human nature that most people only understand after life has knocked the air out of their lungs more than once. The people who trigger you the most are showing you something you've been refusing to see in yourself. Not because they're better than you, but because they've touched a nerve that was already raw. This is the concept of projection, a cornerstone of Carl Jung's psychology, and it's one of the most revealing and painful insights into how we relate to others. Jung taught that we unconsciously cast the parts of ourselves we don't want to face onto the people around us. We see in others what we cannot accept in ourselves. We react not to them, but to our own disowned traits reflected back like a mirror we didn't ask to look into. Imagine this. A man named Devon works in a fast-paced creative agency. He's respected, efficient, and known for keeping his emotions in check. But there's one co-worker, Marcus, who drives him absolutely mad. Marcus laughs too loudly, brags about his wins, and walks into meetings like he owns the place. Every time Devon hears Marcus speak, a quiet rage bubbles under his skin. Why does he need so much attention? Devon asks. He's so arrogant, so full of himself. But what Devon cannot see, what he's buried deep beneath his calm exterior, is a part of him that longs to be recognized, a younger version of himself that once spoke freely, took up space, dreamed boldly, and was mocked for it. That part of Devon didn't die. It just went underground. Now, every time Marcus expresses that same boldness, it presses against a wound Devon never healed. And instead of facing it, he attacks the mirror. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." It's not an accusation, it's an invitation to stop blaming and start understanding, to stop deflecting and start integrating, because what you reject in others may be the very thing you've disowned in yourself. Think about it. The partner who's too emotional, do they awaken the part of you that was told your feelings were a weakness? The friend who's too carefree? Do they remind you of the spontaneity you've buried under duty? The stranger who's too loud, too selfish, too confident? Are they shining a spotlight on something you've suppressed out of fear it wouldn't be accepted? Projection hides in plain sight, disguised as irritation, judgment, or even righteous anger. But underneath every strong reaction is a hidden message. Look closer, and here's the twist. Projection isn't always negative. Sometimes we project our light onto others too. We admire someone's wisdom, their charisma, their fearlessness, and think, I could never be like that. But the truth is, you can only recognize those traits in others if some part of you already contains them. You just haven't claimed them yet. That's what makes projection so mysterious. It doesn't just reveal your wounds, it reveals your potential. So the next time someone gets under your skin, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me are they reflecting? Don't run from that answer. Sit with it. It might hurt, but it will also heal. Because the real enemy is not the person who triggered you. It's the part of you that still lives in hiding comment, if you've ever noticed this in someone you know. Because here's the truth. The person who triggers you is not your enemy. They're your teacher. You don't react to people. You react to the part of yourself they awaken. What if the strangest dreams you've had were never random, but warnings from your future self trying to break through? Every night, as your conscious mind sinks into sleep, another version of you awakens, one without filters, masks, or rehearsed thoughts. Carl Jung believed that your dreams are not just the leftovers of the day. They are the voice of your unconscious, whispering truths in a language older than words, symbols, metaphors, shadows, and archetypes. While your waking self may ignore or suppress discomfort, your sleeping self has no such filter. It speaks boldly, urgently, sometimes even violently, not to scare you, but to save you. Jung once said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." That door opens every night. The question is, do you walk through it? Consider a story. A man named Caleb is a high-performing manager, respected, efficient, sharp, but every night he wakes up drenched in sweat from the same dream. He's trapped in a corridor of endless doors. Some are slightly open, some slammed shut, others glow with strange light, but he's paralyzed, unable to choose. His therapist later helps him unpack it. The hallway isn't just a scene, it's a symbol of all the choices Caleb avoids in real life. The promotion he turned down out of fear, the unresolved grief from his brother's death, the hidden guilt over a marriage that feels hollow. Each door is an unlived truth. And the paralysis, it's the persona, the version of him that must appear strong, decisive, even when lost. His dream wasn't random, it was a mirror. And when he finally chose one of those symbolic doors in his sleep, he wept. He woke up different, lighter, ready. Dreams are the only time the mask falls off without shame. When the persona sleeps, the shadow speaks. A dream where you're being chased. That may be the part of yourself you refuse to confront. Jealousy, rage, grief, or vulnerability. A dream where your voice disappears might signal how often you silence yourself in waking life. A dream where someone you love turns on you might reflect your fear of abandonment, or worse, your belief that you deserve it. These symbols are not coincidences. They are emotional codes, and the more you dismiss them, the more aggressively they return. Jung saw dreams as messengers from the self, the total you, attempting to guide your process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. But here's the twist. Most people don't remember their dreams not because they're forgettable, but because the waking self is often too afraid of what they reveal. Have you ever had a dream that haunted you for days? That's not just a dream. That's your unconscious screaming through symbolism because your conscious mind has been deaf for too long. There's a dramatic irony here. The very thing that could guide your growth is the thing most people dismiss with a shrug. It was just a dream, they say, not realizing those symbols carry the wisdom their waking mind refuses to accept. And the more painful or strange the dream, the more urgent the truth it holds. A woman once dreamt her childhood home burned down with her inside. When she explored it, she realized she had been burying years of resentment toward her parents, and her inner self was begging for liberation through destruction, not of her life, but of her false loyalty. Dreams are not passive, they are demands. Demands that you awaken to your shadow, integrate your contradictions, and reclaim what you've buried. They are your future self, reaching back through time, trying to reroute your fate through midnight symbols. A missed dream is often a missed chance for insight, and that is why Jung considered them sacred. So the next time you jolt awake at 3 a.m. from a dream that feels like it meant something, don't brush it off. Sit with it. Listen. Write it down. Ask what part of you is trying to be heard. Because it's never just about the hallway, the fall, or the chase. Your dreams speak the truth your waking mind tries to silence. There comes a quiet moment in every life when the noise finally fades, and for the first time, you hear your own voice asking, "Who am I?" Really? It's not the kind of question that comes with fanfare or spotlight. It sneaks in while you're brushing your teeth, walking to work, scrolling through other people's lives. And suddenly, you realize you've been living under layers, masks, expectations, obligations that don't even belong to you. Carl Jung called this realization the call to individuation, and it might be the most important invitation you will ever receive. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not the self shaped by your parents' fears, not the version praised by teachers or partners, not the persona you created to win approval in a world that rewards performance over authenticity. It's the quiet, brave unraveling of every identity you've borrowed, every mask you've stitched to your face, and every belief you never questioned because questioning felt like betrayal. But make no mistake, the real betrayal is to stay asleep in a life that doesn't fit your soul. Imagine a man named Daryl, successful on paper, corporate job, polished suit, confident laugh. Everyone admired him, but when his father passed away, something cracked open. At the funeral, Daryl didn't cry. He didn't speak, but that night in the hotel bathroom mirror, he stared at his reflection and whispered, "I don't know who I am without a script." That was the beginning, not of grief, but of awakening. In the weeks that followed, Daryl started noticing things, how he apologized for speaking his mind, how he avoided silence because silence made him feel exposed, how every choice he made was actually someone else's expectation. The mask he thought was protecting him had slowly become a prison. Jung believed that the self you show to the world, the persona, is necessary but dangerous when confused with your identity. The privilege of a lifetime, he wrote, is to become who you truly are. But to accept that privilege, you must first feel the weight of everything you are not, the job that drains you, the relationship that silences you, the group that once made you feel seen but now makes you feel small. These discomforts are not random. They are psychic pressure, the soul's way of nudging you toward authenticity. And here's the tragic irony. Many people ignore the call. They double down on the mask. They chase louder applause. They fake the smile longer, and they tell themselves it's just what adulthood looks like. But Jung warned of this slow death of the spirit, the life unlived, the self abandoned, the shadow unintegrated. Because the longer you wait to meet your true self, the more foreign and frightening it becomes. But for those who dare to answer the call, something remarkable happens. The panic fades, the projections soften. The shadow becomes a guide instead of a ghost. You begin to speak differently, not louder, just more honestly. You stop shrinking to fit old spaces. You stop apologizing for truths that no longer need permission. And you realize something profound. Peace doesn't come from approval. It comes from alignment. This journey will cost you false friends, surface-level compliments, predictable comfort. But it will give you something greater. Integrity, not perfection, not popularity, but wholeness. And wholeness is the only real home your soul has ever been searching for. Have you seen your own mask slip under pressure? Have you ever felt the pull toward a truer version of yourself? Comment if this resonates. Individuation begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. There is a moment, subtle but powerful, when the noise of your everyday life dims just long enough for a whisper to break through. It doesn't come from a stranger. It doesn't come from the past. It comes from your future self, the version of you that has already lived through the fallout of your current patterns, and that whisper carries one message. If you don't face what you're avoiding, you will relive this pain in 1,000 different forms. Carl Jung warned us of this precise danger when he wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Your resistance becomes your routine, and the longer you hide from your truth, the more that truth controls you from the shadows. Jung didn't believe suffering was random. He believed it was the consequence of unconscious living. Imagine a woman named Leela, respected, responsible, seemingly put together. Every day she meets her deadlines, smiles through her meetings, says all the right things. But late at night, when the world is quiet, she scrolls through old messages from someone she pushed away, not because they hurt her, but because they saw too much of her. Her truth scared her, so she put the mask back on. She tells herself she's fine, but in every interaction, she feels hollow, detached, unknown. She begins to resent others for not understanding her, not realizing she's never truly let them see her. This is how the cycle begins. The persona becomes permanent. The shadow grows restless. Projections fill her life with conflict, and her dreams, once vibrant, now feel like warnings she doesn't know how to interpret. She tells herself the world has changed, that people have changed. But deep down, she knows it's her own self she's been dodging. Her future self sees all of it, and that version of her is begging, not with anger, but with urgency. Because what you don't face today, you will crash into tomorrow. Jung taught that every part of your psyche, even the uncomfortable ones, is trying to lead you back to wholeness. But wholeness cannot exist where there is self-deception. If you don't confront your shadow, you won't just feel occasional pain. You'll repeat entire emotional storylines. You'll keep choosing the same kind of partner, reacting the same way to criticism, doubting yourself in the exact moment you need courage. And the more you delay awakening, the more familiar your suffering becomes. It becomes your identity, your pattern, your fate. Projection is especially cruel in this stage of sleepwalking. You begin to label others with the very things you repress in yourself. You call someone arrogant, but it's your own buried desire to be bold. You call someone too emotional, but it's your own feelings you've never let out. Every judgment becomes a mirror, but you think it's a window. So you remain blind, not because you're incapable of seeing, but because you've trained yourself to look away. And what about the persona, that perfect social mask you've polished for years? It starts to suffocate you. You wake up and feel unknown, not just by others, but by yourself. You can't tell if your laughter is real. You don't know if your goals are still yours. And when someone loves you, you quietly wonder, would they still love me if they knew the full truth? Jung believed the greatest suffering comes not from trauma, but from avoidance. Because avoidance steals your ability to grow. And it's not just time you lose. You lose connection, you lose peace, you lose your compass. You keep waking up in the same emotional Groundhog Day, wondering why nothing ever feels different. But the truth is, the cycle continues because you continue without awareness, Your patterns are trying to show you something. Your reactions are giving you clues. Your dreams are mapping out your fear. And your future self, the one who already paid the price, is standing on the other side of your choices, whispering, "Please don't ignore this. Not again. Not this time." The urgency you feel in your chest right now is not anxiety. It's recognition. It's your unconscious finally speaking loud enough to get past the noise. Listen closely. This is not a punishment. It's a rescue. Your future changes the moment you decide to see yourself clearly. There are no strangers in your life, only mirrors wearing masks. Carl Jung believed that the people who enter your world are not random guests, but living symbols, archetypes, summoned by your unconscious at precisely the moment your soul is ready to grow. Think about that. The boss who makes your stomach knot, the friend who lights a fire in your gut, the lover who breaks your heart so precisely. It feels like they were scripted to do it. These people are not accidents. They are roles, crafted by the hidden parts of your psyche to pull you deeper into the story of who you really are. In Jung's psychology, an archetype is more than a personality. It's a recurring pattern, a universal symbol, a psychic blueprint that shows up across time and culture. And when someone steps into your life dramatically, emotionally, or even disruptively, they may not just be someone, they may be something. A mentor, a trickster, a shadow, a wound bearer. Their presence isn't just emotional, it's transformational. It's timed, it's tailored, it's sacred. Let me show you what this looks like. There was once a young executive named Julian, confident, calculating, and respected. He believed his success came from his logic, his discipline, and his mask of emotional control. Then, a new junior associate joined the team, a young man named Eli, reckless, passionate, often late, but disturbingly brilliant. Julian hated him immediately. He called him immature, undisciplined, too emotional. But in secret moments, Julian found himself watching Eli, noticing the fire, feeling envious. The more Julian tried to control Eli, the more he lost control of himself. One day, during a private meeting, Eli said something simple. "You're not angry at me. You're angry because I remind you of who you used to be before you got scared." Julian didn't speak. He couldn't, because in that moment he saw it. Eli wasn't just a colleague. He was the trickster, the archetype that disrupts your comfort, challenges your control, and forces evolution. Eli shattered Julian's carefully maintained persona, exposing the passionate, risk-taking side of himself he had buried to survive corporate life. It was uncomfortable. It was maddening, and it was necessary. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You don't meet people by mistake. You collide with the versions of yourself that you're afraid to become, or desperate to remember. And that's what makes it powerful. The boss who intimidates you may be the shadow, a reflection of the part of you that still doubts your worth. The friend who encourages you may be the inner sage, reminding you of your courage. Even the ex who shattered you might have been the wound bearer, cracking your armor so your real self could finally breathe. And sometimes, the most mysterious part isn't who they are, but why they feel familiar, as if you've known them in a dream or a different life. That's not fantasy. That's your unconscious recognizing a pattern before your conscious mind can name it. It's the feeling of your story advancing. And the deeper truth is this. People don't just enter your life. They arrive when your soul is ready for its next chapter. There comes a night, not during a crisis, not after a tragedy, but on an eerily quiet, forgettable evening. When the silence in your room feels louder than usual, and everything you've built starts to feel oddly unfamiliar. You sit on your bed, stare at the ceiling, and feel a strange hollowness under your chest. Nothing's wrong, but something isn't right either. It feels like your life is happening in front of you, but you're not in it. This is not depression, it's not burnout. It's the first tremor of an internal earthquake. Carl Jung called these moments breaks in the illusion of the persona, the early whispers of awakening when your unconscious begins knocking on the door of your reality, demanding to be heard. The persona, your social mask, the character you've played so well, begins to falter. You start questioning things you've never questioned. Why do I care so much what others think? Why do I feel exhausted even after doing everything right? Why do my relationships feel like roles in a play I no longer auditioned for? That's not a breakdown. That's the self waking up. Jung believed this discomfort is not punishment, it's an invitation. Your unconscious, the part of you buried beneath habits, expectations, and social roles, is no longer content to stay asleep. It wants to be integrated. And the longer you ignore it, the more disoriented you feel in your own skin. You can see it in the woman who built a career. She can't stand to fund a lifestyle she doesn't enjoy. You can see it in the father who says all the right things, but privately feels like a stranger to his own dreams. You can see it in the friend who keeps a perfect home, but cries quietly in the bathroom because her truth doesn't match her presentation. These are not isolated cases. They are symptoms of a deeper fracture, a life built around adaptation, not authenticity. Let me tell you a story. Marcus was a respected financial executive, known for his discipline and ambition. He had the suit, the corner office, the admiration. But one night, while driving home from a successful investor meeting, he pulled over on the side of the highway, not because of car trouble, but because he couldn't remember why he wanted this life. The accolades didn't matter. The applause felt like noise. That night, sitting in the dark with his hands trembling on the wheel, he didn't cry. He just felt nothing, that nothingness was not failure. It was the void left when the mask begins to slip. Marcus wasn't having a breakdown. He was waking up. Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But when the soul insists, when it rises, not even the strongest persona can silence it." That's what awakening feels like. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet, knowing a chill down your spine when someone calls your name and you realize you've been performing, not living. You've been editing your emotions, dressing your wounds in smiles, muting your truth just to remain acceptable. But your truth is done waiting. Awakening is uncomfortable because it confronts everything you thought was you. Your job, your relationships, your ambitions, even your faith. But it's also sacred because it's the first time you begin asking, what if I'm not this mask I've been wearing? And if you're asking that question, you're already crossing the threshold. The people around you may not notice. In fact, they might resent your awakening, especially if they're still sleepwalking. That's the irony. Your awakening threatens their illusion. Don't let that stop you. Because this is the doorway, the bridge between the conditioned self and the true self. And while it's not always pretty, it is always necessary. Tonight, if you feel like everything suddenly feels off, if you feel like your life no longer fits, trust it. Don't run back to comfort. Don't silence the whisper. This is your psyche reclaiming its voice. This is your shadow rising not to scare you, but to guide you. Because truth doesn't come through loudspeakers. It arrives in moments like this. Awakening begins the moment your comfort can no longer hide your truth. There's a reason some people panic when their partner doesn't text back. A reason why some snap when they feel ignored or shut down when they feel criticized. And the truth is, it has nothing to do with the present moment. It's not about the partner, the silence, or the critique. It's about something much older, a wound buried so deep inside that most people don't even realize it's still bleeding. Carl Jung believed that every adult carries within them an inner child, not a metaphorical one, but a living psychic structure made of past emotions, unmet needs, and frozen fears. And that child is not asleep. It speaks every time you overreact, self-sabotage, or chase someone who hurts you. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents, Jung once said. But the greatest burden an adult carries is the unheard cry of the child they used to be. Picture a woman named Leah. On the surface, she's accomplished, kind, confident, but whenever her partner is late, even just 10 minutes, her stomach knots, her chest tightens, and her thoughts spiral. She doesn't yell, but she withdraws. Her partner is confused, reassures her, and she nods. But inside, she's drowning in a storm of abandonment. She doesn't know why, but if you followed the thread backward, you'd find a 5-year-old version of Leah sitting by a window, waiting for a father who said he'd come, and never did. That memory didn't disappear. It just went underground, and now, decades later, it lives inside her nervous system, disguised as anxiety, mistrust, or emotional distance. What looks like insecurity in the present is often just a child's fear wearing grown-up clothes. This is the unhealed child at work, not visible, but powerful. Most people try to fix their lives by changing the outside, new habits, new partners, new routines. But as Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You can't fix your future if your past is still steering from the dark. Every time you sabotage a good relationship because it feels too safe, every time you lash out at small triggers, every time you feel unseen in a way that hurts more than it should, that's your inner child calling out, not to be judged, but to be understood. Jung saw the inner child not just as a memory, but as a guide, one holding the key to true self-awareness. The child knows what you needed but never got. Knows when you started hiding parts of yourself to be accepted. Knows the moment you began believing that love required performance, and until that child is heard, your adult self will keep repeating patterns you don't understand. You'll keep finding yourself in the same arguments, feeling the same heartbreak, living the same fears, as if caught in a loop. That's not bad luck. That's a psychic echo. Take Marcus, a respected team leader. He prides himself on never needing help, never showing weakness, but when a colleague makes a gentle suggestion in a meeting, Marcus explodes. Later he apologizes, says he was just tired. But something deeper happened. That suggestion hit a nerve planted years ago by a parent who constantly criticized him, made him feel not good enough, no matter how hard he tried. So now, any hint of critique feels like a betrayal. Marcus doesn't need better communication skills. He needs to speak to the child inside who still thinks he has to earn love through perfection. And this is the mistake most people make. They shame their reactions, silence their pain, or pretend their childhood wasn't that bad. But your body remembers, your nervous system remembers. The tension, the withdrawal, the anger, they are not flaws. They are survival strategies. What once protected you is now imprisoning you, and the door out isn't discipline, it's compassion. You cannot fight the child inside. You must listen. So ask yourself, when was the first time you felt unloved? When did you first feel invisible? What did you learn to hide just to feel safe? The answers to those questions are not weaknesses. They are the keys to breaking your pattern. Healing begins not with fixing, but with witnessing. Because you cannot grow your future if your past is still driving your decisions in the dark. Imagine someone who panics whenever their partner comes home late. On the surface, it's about timing, but inside, it's the echo of a childhood filled with broken promises Jung taught that the adult can only grow when the child is finally acknowledged. So speak gently to the part of you that hurts. Don't shame it. Don't silence it. Understand it. Your present is shaped by the child you have not yet healed. There is a moment in life when you stop being afraid of the monster in the dark and realize the monster was your reflection, begging to be seen. That moment, Carl Jung believed, is not the end of suffering but the beginning of strength. Because the parts of you that you've tried hardest to bury, the jealousy, the fear, the anger, the shame, do not disappear. They wait. And the longer you wait to face them, the more control they take from you behind the scenes. Jung called this the shadow, the invisible reservoir of everything you've rejected in order to survive in society, be accepted by your family, or stay loved in your relationships. But when you finally look it in the eye, something unexpected happens. You don't fall apart. You come alive. Picture a woman named Clara. On the outside, she was poised, graceful, always helpful, the kind of person who never raised her voice, who everyone relied on. But beneath that calm surface lived a rage she didn't understand, a rage that appeared only when her partner cancelled plans, when her boss gave mild feedback, or when a friend didn't text back fast enough. At first, she blamed them. She told herself it was disrespect, that they were ungrateful, selfish. But in therapy, a sentence shattered her. What if your anger isn't about them? What if it's the part of you that's tired of being silent? Clara broke down because she realized the truth. She had spent her whole life being what others needed, and she had abandoned her own voice in the process. Her shadow wasn't evil, it was honest, and when she faced it, her voice came back stronger than ever. Jung taught that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's not just a metaphor, it's a roadmap. If you envy someone, it's often because you've suppressed your own desire. If you're scared of someone's confidence, it's because you haven't owned your own power. These are not flaws. They're clues. The shadow is not a villain. It is a message written in pain, waiting for translation. Think about the colleague who constantly brags you find him unbearable. But why? Is it because he's arrogant, or because deep down you've been taught it's wrong to ask for credit, and his boldness offends your silence? Or imagine the friend who lives freely, takes risks, and seems reckless to you. Could it be that part of you craves the same freedom, but fear has kept you behind the glass, watching life instead of living it? Facing your shadow means you stop pretending. You stop apologizing for your real feelings. You stop outsourcing your power to other people's approval. Because the truth is, every single trait you hate in others, or fear in yourself, carries a key to your potential, a key to your voice, a key to the parts of your soul you've exiled for too long. When you name it, you reclaim it. When you reclaim it, you integrate it. And when you integrate it, you become whole. This is why the people who scare you with their confidence, their freedom, their honesty, they're not intimidating because they're perfect. They're grounded because they've done the shadow work. They've owned their pain, they've faced their flaws, and they've stopped trying to split their identity into good and bad. That's what real authenticity looks like, not perfection, but integration. And maybe that's the message your future self has been whispering all along. That the very thing you're running from is the thing that will make you strong. You don't need to defeat your shadow. You need to understand it, because once you do, you no longer walk through life fragmented, defensive, or afraid. You walk through life as someone who knows who they are, and that kind of person cannot be manipulated, cannot be silenced, and cannot be lost. So tonight, if something inside you still feels heavy, if a part of you feels like it's hiding, know this. Your power is not missing. It's just waiting to be reclaimed. Your shadow becomes your strength the moment you stop running from it. There is a moment in every person's life when the truth rises like a quiet shadow behind them, waiting to be noticed, and that moment is now. The greatest twist in your psychological story is not something outside of you. It is the realization that the very voice warning you about your patterns is also the voice capable of freeing you from them. At first, this feels impossible, almost like a paradox. How can you be both the danger and the solution. But this is exactly the kind of inner contradiction Carl Jung devoted his life to understanding. He believed the psyche is built from opposites, the persona and the shadow, the mask and the truth, the fear and the longing, constantly pulling you toward wholeness. And the moment you stop fighting these opposites is the moment you finally see who you are. Think of a person you know who keeps repeating the same toxic relationship over and over. They swear they've learned their lesson, promise themselves it won't happen again, even change their routines. Yet somehow, like a tragic pattern written in invisible ink, they fall for the same behavior, different face, same wound. You might think fate is punishing them, but Jung would say the unconscious is simply replaying what has not been healed. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The warning in their story is obvious to you, but to them, it feels like the universe is against them. They don't realize the warning is coming from within, and so is the answer. Imagine a respected leader in a company, admired for calmness, praised for control, who suddenly snaps in a meeting over something small. The room freezes. People assume stress broke him, but what really happened is deeper. A lifetime of silence, pressure, and fear finally burst through the cracks of the persona he built. The very mask that once protected him became the cage that trapped him. This is the mystery Jung spoke about again and again, the mask, persona, and the shadow dancing around each other until truth breaks through. What seems like a breakdown is often an awakening in disguise, a collapse on the outside, but a return to self on the inside. Or think of the friend who always tries to be the strong one, the helpful one, the calm one. Everyone relies on them, everyone praises them, but no one sees the nights when their chest tightens, their stomach twists, and they stare at the ceiling wondering why they feel so empty. They don't realize that their kindness is actually a survival strategy, a persona shaped by childhood fears of rejection. Their warning is their exhaustion, their answer is their shadow, but they don't know this yet, and that is the tragedy and the beauty of the journey you are stepping into. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from embracing every part of yourself, even the messy, hidden, uncomfortable parts. He wrote, "I would rather be whole than good." That is the final return to self, choosing truth over approval, integration over image, authenticity over safety. When you understand your persona, you stop mistaking your mask for your identity. When you face your shadow, you stop letting buried emotions control your reactions. When you see your projections, you stop blaming others for your unhealed wounds. When you decode your dreams, you start understanding the instructions your unconscious has been trying to send you. And when you recognize the archetypes in your relationships, you realize people enter your life for reasons your conscious mind cannot always see. The story of your life changes the moment you realize you're not a victim of fate. You are the author. The warning your future self sends is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you. The version of you who is wiser, calmer, and more self-aware already knows how your current patterns will play out if you ignore them. But here is the twist that creates the turning point. That same future self also knows you can rewrite everything the moment you decide to see yourself clearly. This is the return to self, not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet reclaiming of every part of your identity. Wholeness does not happen in a single day, it happens in a single decision. The decision to stop running from who you are. And that decision opens the door to a future that finally belongs to you. So before you sleep tonight, remember this. The message you are searching for has always been inside you. Self-awareness is the moment your future finally becomes your own.